Welcome back, Brian. It is great to see you and discuss a few more things that we wanted to chat about today. Number one being the focus on cross copilot functional capabilities. So I had a number of questions I wanted to ask as far as that's concerned from within Hyperbots. To kick us off, wanted to first start with workflow. How flexible is it in Hyperbots? Really across subsidiaries and spend categories.
Sure. So, I mean, it's key. I mean, flexibility is what it's all about right now, right? I mean, I don't even know if it'd be nice. I think we kind of enjoy the structures that we have. I mean, we've grown to the level of complexity because we've seen opportunities, but that then requires flexibility. And so it's really, really critical. In my past, you end up with tremendous number of different systems, different organizations through acquisition. But I mean, really, what's really nice is that every co-pilot inherits very specific drag and drop workflow designer. So what we like to do is we route the exceptions by business unit. We can do it by project code. We can even do it by vendor risk tier. So, I mean, if you think about it, it's really whatever the restriction is your level of imagination, right? So we can really do it by any kind of SKU. So I was saying, if you're in a situation where the organization has, through merger or more often through acquisition, they give us a new entity that we have to deal with. And so for myself, what's really great is I just clone the template, right? Tweak to approval tiers and publish. So what's great from my perspective, no code, no IT ticket. So again, we just operate and it goes and it can go both ways in the sense that parts of organizations leave, we buy different parts of the organization. So I don't think anyone believes the world's going to get slower or less complex. The criticality of flexibility only continues to rise.
Yep. Makes sense. And, I think we're all bogged down by emails constantly. And, I think the day to day gets pretty heavy in inboxes that we manage. But talking about notifications, how are those handled so users aren't buried in their email?
Right. And I mean, you teed it up perfectly, right? I mean, there's no one saying, I don't get enough emails during the day, right? And what's important is how do I identify what's important and what's not? And I'm not talking about even stuff coming from outside. I'm just saying inside. The way the system works so well is that the rules push only content-rich alerts. So the idea that you'd see something like invoice 4527, overtaxed 0.75%, credit memo requested, right? That's important. But what's great is the system can go to Slack and can go to Teams. And then once it's done that, like you can snooze, you can escalate, or you can jump into the Copilot screen with a single click, right? And so improvement is that our old batch reports, it would take days, right? Now we have a situation that as close to real time as possible. We're seeing when these important exceptions arise.
Yep. That makes sense. And then, I think I align well with having notifications on all platforms I'm using, right? It's not just email that I have a tab open for. Maybe I'm in email or maybe I'm in Slack or Teams, like you had mentioned. Having that notification there and being able to interact is huge for seeing that, being able to act to it attentively.
100%.
And data security is certainly non-negotiable. What makes the platform trustworthy?
So yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what everyone wants to understand, right? And whatever you see it every day in your news feed, right? About the challenges that everyone's having with data security, the monsters that are out there now that are keeping that battle going. So exactly 100% non-negotiable. Field level redaction getting a little wonky here. So the fact that AES 256 encryption, you've got customer scoped presentation sets, it's wrapped in ISO 27001, SOC 1 Type 2, SOC 2 Type 2 audits. So again, a little bit outside of my swim lane, but it's important to understand it. And if you think about the criticality, it's like even model training runs are in a tenant isolated sandbox. So again, I think everyone understands we've spent a lot of sleepless nights worrying about data security and dealing with Hyperbots. that's taken care of.
And do you get visibility into how agents and APIs are performing within Hyperbots?
Oh yeah. I mean, again, it's one thing to be sometimes I kind of refer to, what we're doing on our AI journey is faith-based in the sense that, we believe this is making things better, but to really sell it to the organization, you've got to have the metrics behind it. And so we do have the visibility. So we have all sorts of systems analytics. We can look at agent latency. We can look at IPI failures, model accuracy, straight through percentages in real time. So, for example, we saw recently, a bank's API slowed. Ops spotted the spike and rerouted the payments even before Treasury even noticed. And so, again, it's the idea that we are really leveraging and empowering AI to do the things it's really good at and freeing up the humans. So that's why we always have human in the loop to focus on what's really critical that AI can't do. And so, again, this is just another great example of it.
Totally. I consider it not just analytics, but almost diagnostics, right? How well is it performing? Seeing that at every level. So now your team, and we talked about this on our prior conversation, your team jumps between three ERPs. How seamless is single sign-on?
In all honesty, in the world today, 3 ERPs is small.
Yeah, totally.
Folks, because it's the other thing too, I think sometimes people forget, it's not just different ERPs, it's different versions of the ERP. So you could be on a single platform, but you may have 5 different versions of it, right? And so that creates a challenge. So the team's always worried about, oh my gosh, do I have to go in and out and log in and go back? And how does that all work? Well, again, what's great with Hyperbots is one Azure AD login covers everything. So, and that's not the only option. So Hyperbots supports OTA and Google Workplace and one login. So the tokens flow to each connector behind the curtain, right? It's not anything that the employee has to work with. So it's great because the staff then's never juggling passwords or VPNs ever again.
That's great. Now, business changes are always occurring, and it's about adaptability and what's today isn't tomorrow kind of scenario. How quickly can you adapt the system when there are business changes?
Right. And I mean, that's kind of getting into the idea of kind of future proofing, right? It's not just about solving the problems as we exist today, it's what's coming down the pike. And so for me, it's kind of funny. My background's in civil engineering. That's where future proofing comes from. The simple example for our friends on the line is, it's when you build a parking deck, for example, it's putting in supports, like you're building a 3-deck parking, but you put in supports for 5. Right. And so the idea being is if you need to add, you don't have to tear the building down and rebuild it. And that's the same thing that we're looking at when we're talking about future proofing with tech. And so what's great is thanks to really no code configurability, right? We're adding a carbon footprint field took 10 minutes, right? A generalized data model, declarative rules engine, auto machine learning, retrain makes tweaks in a config exercise. So I'm sorry, it's making tweaks or, in a config exercise. It's not a development sprint, right? We're just making small little changes and instead of rebuilding the wheel.
Yep, totally. What does observability look like for IT?
That's a good question. So obviously it's important to have observability. You look at it and you have like a Grafana style dashboard, stream service uptime, API throughput, memory headroom. It alerts hits a duty pager if thresholds break. So the idea being, again, it's all about speed in the world today, right? So we diagnose these issues in minutes instead of basically filling a vendor ticket and waiting for the problem to get resolved. The observability is critical, but it's so we can become more efficient and more effective.
Absolutely. Just like, business changes, anything like that, UI changes, I would say in more of the legacy suites can take weeks, right? how fast is it in kind of this age of automation? Like, for example, with Hyperbots, like how fast is it compared to, legacy suites that you've seen?
Sure. So what's really cool is the platform, the Hyperbots platform, kind of generalized the UI's framework so it binds components to the data models. For example, I added a fast track approval button to a payment screen by toggling a flag. That was it. No front end code, no redeploy. So again, incredible amount of flexibility that's empowering the users
Yeah,
to make the improvements.
absolutely. Now, auditors ask for line item level evidence, right? And you need that kind of detail. Describe the audit trail in Hyperbots. What does that look like? What does it include?
Again, this might sound funny coming from a finance person. I love audit. I've always enjoyed audit because it's the idea of, yes, I like what I do, but if there's ways that I can do it better, I want to know. And so again, the anything that makes audit's life easier, I embrace, because oftentimes that can be one of your strongest advocates. And saying, when you want to make a technological change, if you can get the folks in audit saying, yeah, this will make our lives better, increase the trustworthiness of the information, so much the better. So when we think about auditors, so every AI or human action is timestamped. We've got the old value, we've got the new value. It's hashed into an immutable ledger. I've had the situations like, do we need extra trails, for example? Well, that we can flip a no-code switch, new events start logging instantly. So again, the one of the challenges, again, that I've seen in my career is, how can we show audit? How can they trust what we're doing? By giving them a robust, observable audit trail, then those audit and they feel more comfortable about what we're doing.
Yeah. It's almost like make audit less daunting. Spin it in a positive way, a positive connotation for
that's
audits.
That's how I've really, honestly, in my career, I've tried doing it. Is that audits, like places that I've worked, they're like you're the only person who likes us.
They're happy to see you, Brian.
It's like, this is going to be an easy assignment because Brian actually wants to work with us. So yeah, it's another asset that you have, that when you want to make, especially when you want to have any kind of spend, right? If you can get audit behind you, that's a really powerful ally to have.
Right. Well, I think whenever you look at a system that you're using, not everyone needs or has the same controls, and some should be able to see certain info, interact with certain info, others, in different areas as well. Like, how granular can you get? Like, how granular are permissions from within the system?
Sure. They're very granular. So if you think about invoices, for example, so we restrict invoice views by company code, by cost center. APIs are scoped to read only or post. What I really felt good about was even, your LLM can't fetch data outside of the user's permission set. So, again, in talking about the complex environments that we operate in, this is really vital for a multi-tenant privacy, that you only see the data that you're allowed to see and utilize. And especially from finance, we deal with some really, really sensitive data. And so you really can't operate in an environment where you can't control who sees what.
Totally.
And Hyperbots permits us to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that flexibility that's huge. But I think being able as any user to go in and, hey, I'm only permitted to do, XYZ task, you're only seeing like what's pertinent to your day to day, and it almost streamlines things by nature. So, as a kind of a final question here to wrap it all up, how do roles translate into daily collaboration?
Right. And I think, we're beginning to see more and more, and I think the importance of collaboration, right? Because what we're saying is a lot of like the more manual tasks are going to be automated in AI in a way. And what's going to become much more important is our ability to collaborate with others. So, when you're setting up the system, finance defines the role, right? And so I've got an AP clerk, I've got a treasury analyst, I've got a plant manager, for example. And each has, as you were just talking about, each has task specific permissions across all the co-pilots. So, for example, when AI flags a pricing discrepancy, right, it identifies who really needs to see that. And just in this little example I shared, that's to the plant manager, right? And so within their permissions, they can override it. The system routes it automatically, enforcing segregation of duty. So we're going back to audit without any kind of manual policing involved. And so again, you always want to check to make sure that's how it's happening. But again, it's the great thing about AI. It follows the rules every time, right? Yeah. We set it up properly, and Hyperbots does a fantastic job of doing that, right? We don't have to make sure that people are doing what they should be doing because, again, the beauty is it only follows the rules.
Totally. Takes the guesswork out for sure.
Yep.
So awesome. Well, really appreciate it. I thought it was a great discussion. Laid out a lot about kind of the cross Copilot functional capabilities from within Hyperbots, stemming from a variety of areas. We talked a little bit about security, cross subsidiaries, how different performance measures are kind of handled, permissions, you name it. And I think, one takeaway is it's helped make audits a lot easier and again, spin in a positive way. So thanks again, Brian. Really appreciate you having the discussion and looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. Be well.
Thanks.